Be'ezrat Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. I want to welcome you to another session of our Parashat Shavua learning as we continue our learning of Parashat BAMIDBAR, the fourth book in the Chumash. Baruch Hashem, last week we did Chazak, Chazak. We finished Sefer Vayikra and we're embarking on a whole new Sefer BAMIDBAR. This week's Parasha has a lot going on. We're only going to focus in on one concept, which is going to be children's education, chinuch, and very interesting insights towards a comparison between Aharon's children and Moshe's children, and what we can learn for ourselves today. Very interesting class. Before we get started, I'd like to give some honorable mentions and dedications to the following people. Yitbarach Shemo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Be'ezrat Hashem, this class will be in honor of Jacqueline Bat Alia and Tova Shindel Bat Alta. Also, that should be to the Ilu Nishmat of David ben Zohara, Yaniv ben Rina, Michel ben Zohara, Aviv ben Vivi, Avraham Yoshua ben Sultuna, Simon ben Alia, Mazal Bat Luna, Meir ben Rebecca, Sultana Bat Frecha, Yitzchak ben Tzevia, Nisim ben Meir, Rachel Bat Bela, Yaakov ben Tamar, Susan Bat Shava, Yehuda ben Aaron, Brendel Bat Meirdov, Shalom ben Zohara, Chana bat Chava, Kranchi bat Braindol. Also, that this class will be to the Refuah Shelema of Amram ben Zohara, Lavi Rafael ben Olga, Daniel bat Mazal, Miriam bat Pesi Penina, Yaakov ben Dina, Gavriel ben Mashiach, Keren Chava bat Dona, Nir ben Yehudit, Chaya Yael Shoshana bat Chana Freidel, Lea Sarid bat Yael Shindel, Shaul Yosef ben Garaz, Heleni Orna bat Chenchana, and Ahuva bat Shendel. Also, Be'ezrat Hashem, that this class will be to the Zivug Hagun, Mishoresh Nishmatam, to Inbal bat Jacqueline, Guy ben Dina, Shena Henshi bat Leah Gittel, Eli ben Shula, Yehudit bat Sarah, Tamar Adina bat Devor Miro, and Yosef ben Sarah. Also, that it should be to the Bracha, Batzlacha, and success of Avraham ben Daniel, Yosef ben Daniel, Avraham ben Vayrat Chaya, Yehuda Lev ben Tova Shindel, Desiree and Avia, Yael Tepperberg and family, Joseph Dornbush and family, Judah Mendel and family, Dov Shmuel and Pesi Penina and family, Shalom ben Chaya Carmela, and also to Yehudit ben Shabbat. Hashem vayech otchem, v'sameach otchem. Very grateful for all the involvement of all the people in the classes, and the sponsoring, and the dedications. And of course, the people that are here at night. Things are going to be a little bit different after Shavuot. Most shuls are going to go back to an earlier time for prayer, and then there won't be this whole thing, because right now everybody's praying Mincha and Arvit. So it's a little bit problematic, but in a couple of weeks it should be fine. Okay, let's get started. Very interesting class. Very, very interesting class. A lot of takeaways. I want to start off with the first pasuk of this week's parasha. Vayomer Adonai Moshe במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם את מצרים לאמור שאו את ראש כל עדת בני ישראל למשפחותם לבית אבותם במספר שמות כל זכר לגולגולתם. It says וידבר השם משה במדבר סיני באוהל מועד. So now we have Hashem speaking to Moshe in the desert, in Sinai, in the holy place of Ohel Moed, the tent of the meeting. When? Welcome. Be'echad lachodesh hasheni, on the first day of the second month, b'shana hasheni, on the second year. So if we imagine the Exodus, it happened 2 years after the Exodus. B'shana hashenit letzetam me'eretz Mitzrayim lemor, and he's instructing Moshe to do something. Se'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Take them census. Start to count the people according to the tribes by the that is associated with the father. Count all the men from 20 years and older. All the ones that can go to war. You and Aaron shall count them. So again, first grade level understanding. What do we have over here? Oh, it's a census. God just wants us to, Moshe and Aharon, to count the people. There's so much beneath the surface. We're probably not going to move past this and another section in Revi'i. But let's first understand the beginning. When it says, "Se'u et kol rosh adat bnei Yisrael mishpechotam lebet avotam." It says that you have to lift or count the heads of all the people according to their families, according to the lineage of the father. Which is different because we know that to be a Jew, it all depends whether you came from a Jewish mother. But apparently here, when they're doing the census, it all depends on who your father is. Tana de Belial says in Tana de Belial Rabbah Pek Chafet on the second page, it says, Shekol echad ve'echad misrael chayav lomar. Every single Jew must say this to themselves. Matai yagiu ma'asai le'masei avotai. When are my actions, the way that I carry myself, going to be similar to the ways of the patriarchs? Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. When am I going to be like the patriarchs? When am I going to be like Avraham? When am I going to be like Yitzchak? When am I going to be like Yaakov? V'hainu, shekol echad ve'echad miSrael mutet chova kedosha lishor me'ez shorosh ram v'nisa. Remember where you came from. Remember your holy lineage. Remember where you come from, your DNA. Kadosh v'tahor, holy and pure. And that is where nechtzeva nishmato, that is where your soul is taken from. Shoresh avotenu akdoshim Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. You come, your source is you come from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Shemasu et nafsham lefarsem kadesh et shmo shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. That they were willing to sacrifice their life, there were full dedication, their entire life, to sanctify the name of God in the world. Vayumer kaval hashchina kedusha, they were actual chariot for God's holy presence. Therefore, now that you know where you come from, and you know that you are the son or grandson or great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson of spiritual giants, what should you do? Strive to be like them. Strive to be holy. Strive to be pure. And it should be on your wish list, on your daily wish list. I would like to be like Avraham. I would like to be like Yitzchak. I would like to be like Yaakov. You should strive for that. Furthermore, it says, in regards to the leaders of this world, the rabbis, the Moshe Rabbenus of this world, or anybody who's in a leadership position, teachers, parents, never give up on any Jew. Never give up on those Jews that are very, very far away from the religion. Let it be whatever he is. The famous statistic that I hate to repeat is that 80% are off the derech and 20% are connected. They said they took a poll a few years ago, and they said that when you look at the Jewish people as a whole at 14 million people, about 2 to 3 million people are religious, keeping Shabbat, kashrut, are affiliated, to some sort of the tzad of orthodoxy, and then you have about 70 or 80% that are off the derech. They're living a secular life. So we'd like to say maybe after Corona and after October 7th, maybe a few more people, their heart got stirred a bit from some of the situations that we were put in, and maybe now we're closer to 60, 70, not 70, 80. Nevertheless, when it comes to the statistic, it's not a favorable statistic. A bulk of the Jewish people are off the derech. A bulk of the Jewish people as a whole are not religious, are not connected to the religion. They might consider themselves spiritual, they might still believe in God. It's great, it's a start, but nowhere close to what Hashem expects from us as Jews. However, how do you look at that other side? How do you look at that other side, the people that are not going in the ways of Torah, mitzvot, and maasim tovim? What do? He said, "Lo lityayesh mishum Yehudi ba'olam." Never despair from any Jew. Yeh matzavo asher yeh, regardless of what status he's in, spiritual status. Ela ishtadu laset u'romem et komato ruchonit. Try to elevate them. Try to uplift them. Try to bring them up, to bring up their spiritual level. שמשום זה גם יהודי שזה לעת עתה נראה רחוק מאוד משמורת התורה ומצוות, because even though when you see a person who's so far off the derech, the guy is literally eating pig. He's tattooed from head to toe. He doesn't keep Shabbat. He doesn't keep mitzvot. Maybe if you see him on Yom Kippur, he'll put the kippah on his head like a teepee and come to hear the shofar. Still, that guy, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope on that guy. He's also from the branch of the great giants of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. He's just like you. He is a descendant of the holy patriarchs of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and surely because he is a descendant from the patriarchs, inside of him resides a Holy Spirit, a holy spark of God, a holy neshama kedusha. Never despair when you see somebody like that. You have to have patience, and you have to want to bring them closer slowly, until the spirit of the forefathers will awaken in him too. I'd like to actually it just popped into my mind. I want to share it with you. I remember a few years ago, Rav Israel Abergel Shlita said, he says, let me ask you a question. If there was a diamond, a rare diamond, one of these like 50 carat pink diamonds from Africa, the thing is worth $500 million. And let's just say for whatever reason, this diamond fell into, pardon the place and the people there, into excrement. Would you put your hand to take out that diamond? Whatever it is, would you? Let me ask you a question. Not you, we're simple people. Let's take the chashuvim, right? Let's take the super chashuvim people of our generation. Leminahem, as they say, you think Trump would put his hand to get a $500 million diamond?
I think yes.
Anybody would. Because why? Because you take that diamond, he's in the worst place that it could be, but you take it onto the water, you wash it off, and what do you have? You have $1 billion diamond. Sometimes a Jew is like that. It's $1 billion diamond in the middle of excrement. He's around all the goyim, this and that. Sometimes you have to go into the worst places to get him out. But who wouldn't go into those places to get such a jewel? That's what the Rebbe is saying over here. Never give up. Never give up on the Jew. No matter what spiritual status he's in, he's still a diamond. Furthermore, Rav Menachem Mendel Mikotsk chimes in on this pasuk and says, when we say on this midrash that says, "Matai yagiu ma'asai le'masei avotai," when will my actions echo the actions of my forefathers? He says, when you get to the point that you are b'madrigat avot hakedoshim, when you become to the same level of the forefathers. He says, no. Obviously you can't. Obviously you can't be Avraham. You can't be Yitzchak. You can't be Yaakov. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's not talk about things that are very lofty and not achievable, right? We don't want to do that. We don't want to fool each other over here. We want to talk real talk. We want to talk about things that are achievable. So he says, הכוונה היא שהאדם יקדש את מעשיו עד שתהיה להם נגיעה ושייכות למעשיהם של אבות הקדושים. Let your actions be on the same path and the line as the patriarchs. In the minimum, be on the same road, be on the same highway as Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So like that, whenever somebody lays eyes on you, they say, that's a Jew. He's acting like Avraham. He's acting like Yitzchak. He's acting like Yaakov. He's got the qualities of a Jew. He's got a quality of a great Jew. וישייך אותו לזרם של אבות הקדושים. כל רואיהם יכירום כי הם זרע ברך השם. As it says in the prophet Yeshaya, כל רואיהם יכירום. Anyone that will see a Jew will recognize that it's a Jew. Why? כי הם זרע, they come from the progeny, from the seed of Berach Hashem that God blessed. Which seed did Hashem bless? Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. They each got the bracha. So imagine that when you go into the street and you're in the mall and you're in the supermarket and they look at you, the way you're letting a person go in front of you, the way something fell on the floor, everybody's walking by, you're picking it up, the way you're helping somebody into the car, can I help you? Oh, how are you? Yeah, I love those moments. You know why? I said, I'm sorry, wait, let me fix my kippah before I get started. How can I help you? Let me help you with the grocery. Let me help you with the thing that fell. Ask me a question and let me be well-mannered and pleasant and with a smile. We're out there promoting God. The minute you put a kippah on your head, that's it. Whether you like it or not, you're the poster boy for Judaism. So this is what this pasuk is saying. It'll come to the point that what? Shekol ro'ehem, when they lay eyes on us, yekirum, they'll say, they're the chosen nation. They're the ones that are going in the ways of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Kiyem zera be'ech Hashem. The complete opposite. Imagine for like these hooligans that everywhere we go we steal. Chas v'shalom, right? Or everywhere that we go there's violence. Everywhere that we go there's destruction. Oh wow! Let me stop for a second. Sounds like somebody we know. You know, you turn on the TV. Every time you turn on the TV, it's the usual suspects. Those are always the ones that are stealing. Those are always the ones that are terrorizing. Or they're always the ones that are destroying. Those Zera Ishmael, Zera Ham. You notice it's like they earned that title. Lehavdil, the complete opposite. When somebody lays eyes on us, they understand that what? Look at those Jews. Look at the quality. Look at where they came from. Look at their values. Look at their morals. Look at their mores. Furthermore, here's a play on words. It says, Matai yagiu. It says, Matai yagiu ma'asai le'ma'aseh avotai. When will my actions reach the actions of my forefathers? The word yagiu in Hebrew means to reach. But there's an alternate definition to it. There's an alternate meaning to yagiu. What is it? Yagiu melshon yagi'ah u'ma'amatz. That means when you are actually exerting yourself. Matai yagiu, when I'll start to exert myself? When will I have make an effort, an overt effort to be like the patriarchs? When's the last time we pushed ourselves to the limit, to our personal limit, to be the best Jewish version of ourselves? You could be real. It could be also never. You could also say, I never did it. I've never pushed myself to the limit of to be the best Jew that I can be. Or you could say, you know, I've had some days. I've had some good days. Or you could also say, I never. It's okay to get exposed in a class when people ask you a question and all of a sudden say, you know what? On the spiritual barometer, I'm failing or I'm mediocre or maybe I should do better. But when's the last time you said, I'm doing my utmost today to live a full religious, connected, spiritual day, week, month, life? When you start to get to that point, you'll start to scratch the surface of who Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were. They were all in all the time. 9,000 RPMs all day for Hashem, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Pedal on the metal. Whatever Hashem wants, all day, every day. When's the last time you had that attitude? About your tefillah, about your tzedakah, about your learning, about your acts of kindness. If you just want to get a glimpse of who Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were, that's how they carried themselves. They were all in, mesirut nefesh, total sacrifice for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every single minute of the day. Hayu yegeim, what's yegeim? They were fully exerted. They made maximum effort every single day to stay connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and be in the ways of God. When's the last time you did that? When was the last time you said, let me have one day like that, a year? So you can come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu at the end of the year and said, remember Nisan, Chav Zayin Nisan? Remember I took the day off and I was just like me and you? Remember I said one day a month is just me and you, Hashem? That no matter what, I'm handing in a masterpiece of a day. The patriarchs had that as an everyday event. Everyday event that we're all in. So we have to also, when he says, the pasuk, Se'u et rosh kol adat b'Yisrael, lift up the heads of the Jewish people to do what? Lift your head up. You're not a lowly human being on planet Earth like everybody else. You're not like the 9 billion other people. You're not like the other 9 billion people. You are special, you're unique, and you have a lot of potential. How much potential? The amount of potential that I have? What could I reach? Open Sefer Bereshit and look at Abraham, look at Yitzchak and Yaakov, and you could be the exact same thing. You can draw from that. You have that available. It's in your DNA. And just to be clear, after 120 years, when you go up to the heavens, and maybe we can AC a little bit, if you don't mind. Make it... It's okay if we touch the 60s. If you don't mind. Shalom Aleichem. Thank you. So let's just be clear. Don't think when you get up to the Shamayim after 120 years, you're going to come in front of the heavenly court and you're going to say, why weren't you like Avraham? Why weren't you like Yitzchak? Why weren't you like Yaakov? And you're going to have an answer. There's no way. Because I lived in Miami. Because my generation had TV and social media. And then it was very difficult to make parnasa. You could have a lot of reasons why. They're not going to ask you that question. But what they are going to ask you is, why weren't you Sharon? Why weren't you Sarah? Why weren't you Yehudit? Why weren't you Gabriel? Why didn't you live up to your maximum potential? That you'll have to answer to. That you'll have to answer to. Why you didn't live up to your maximum potential since you came from this gene pool of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? When I read this ma'amar, it started to think about children. Why? Because the whole parasha talks about the children of Yaakov, the children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And now, how we grew from this family of 70 that went through the whole process of the Exodus, being slaves for 210 years, coming out of Egypt, the 10 plagues, the splitting of the sea, Matan Torah and Har Sinai, and now we're getting counted, and you see, we're thousands and thousands and thousands of Jews. And this family, and that family, and this amount of kids, and that amount of kids. So all we see is kids, 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 kids. Children, children, children. Offsprings. And then on the fourth aliyah, in Perek Bet, Pasuk Aleph, come across a very interesting section in this week's parasha. It says, Ve'ele toldot Aharon u'Moshe, beyom diber Adonai et Moshe behar Sinai. These are the offsprings of Aharon and Moshe on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Mount Sinai. Ve'ele shemot bnei Aharon ha'bechor Nadav ve'Abihu Elazar ve'Itamar. These are the names of the sons of Aharon. The firstborn is Nadav, and then we have Abihu, Elazar, and Itamar. Ele shemot bnei Aharon ha'kohanim ha'mishuchim asher milei yadam lechaen. And by the way, these four are also the ones that were anointed in order to be able to serve in the Mishkan as Kohanim. וימות נדב ואביהו לפני אדוני בהקריבם אש זרה לפני אדוני במדבר סיני ובנים לא היו להם ויכהן אלעזר ותמר פני אהרון אביהם. Nadav and Avihu died in front of God when they brought over a strange fire in Har Sinai, and Nadav and Avihu had no children, and Elazar and Itamar took over the position of having to be a Kohen working in the Mishkan. That is all we're going to learn today. We're going to learn this section of Revi'i about Moshe and Aharon and their children. So first things first, I have a few questions about this section. First one, it says, Ve'ele toldot Aharon u'Moshe. This is the offspring of Aharon and Moshe. And then it begins to mention only the children of Aharon. Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, ve'Itamar. Second question that I have, well, so again, let's crystallize the question. It's a famous question. Rashi is going to also bring it up, but let's crystallize the question. If you're telling me that this is the offspring of Moshe, of Moshe and Aharon, why are you mentioning just Aharon's children? Question number one. Question number two, Moshe has children, Gershom and Eliezer. They're not mentioned at all. So why aren't Moshe's children mentioned at all? So let's start with a famous Rashi. ואלה תולדות אהרון ומשה, ואינו מזכיר אלא בני אהרון. It says here's the offspring of Aaron and Moshe, and they only mention the offspring of Aaron. ונקראו תולדות משה לפי שלמדם תורה. He says, and you know why the children of Aaron are called the children of Moshe? Because he taught them Torah. מלמד שכל המלמד את בית חברו תורה מעלה עליו הכתוב כאילו ילדו. Anybody who teaches somebody else's child Torah, it counts for him as if he gave him birth. So because Moshe Rabbeinu taught the children of Aharon, they're considered like his children. Aharon is the biological father, and Moshe is the spiritual father. He's the one that gave him the spiritual life. This concept of when you teach children, they become yours, or they count like as if you gave them birth. I want to develop it a little bit more. I just want to give you a little bit more context from different sources. Masechet Kiddushin, the 30th page on the first side says, Kol ha-melamed livno Torah, anybody who teaches a son Torah, מעלה עליו הכתוב כאילו לימדו לבנו ובן בנו עד סוף כל הדורות. Somebody who teaches his son Torah, it counts for him as if he taught him and his son and his grandson and all the generations after. So if you have, Baruch Hashem, for those that have children in the room, you teach them Torah, it counts for you like you taught every single generation from that moment on till the end of time. Masechet Kiddushin. Furthermore, הגאון הצדיק רבי יהודה צדקה, זכר צדיק וקדוש לברכה, the famous rabbi wrote in his book Kol Yehuda on 2 pesukim in Bereshit, famous pesukim. If you ever wanted to know why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu choose Avraham out of all the people on planet Earth at that time, what was so unique about Avraham at that time? It says, ואברהם היו יהיה לגוי גדול ועצום ונברחו בו כל גוי הארץ. This is a blessing that Abraham got from Hashem. He's going to be a big nation, a tremendous nation, and all the nations will be blessed for him. Why? What do we say when we see the word key? It's a master key. Right now they're going to give us a master key to understanding why Avraham Avinu received such a great reward. כי ידעתיו למען אשר צווה את בניו ואת ביתו אחריו ושמרו דרך השם לעשות צדקה ומשפט למען הביא השם על אברהם את אשר דיבר עליו. He says, you know why Hashem blessed him to be a great nation, a tremendous nation in numbers, and all the nations will be blessed upon because of him? Because Hashem knew כי ידעתיו למען אשר צווה את בניו. He's going to be the one that instructs his children ואת ביתו and his house, meaning men, women, and children, אחריו ושמרו דרך השם. What was unique about Avraham, he was going to teach his family, he was going to teach his children to go in the way of God. That's why he was chosen. לעשות צדקה ומשפט, to bring justice and charity into the world. למען הביא השם על אברהם את אשר דיבר עליו. And because he's going to do that, because Avraham did it himself and taught it to his children, and his children are going to continue this way forevermore, Hashem is going to bring this beracha upon him just like he promised. So we see we have over here the beginning of the Jewish nation. The beginning quality of the Jewish nation. The service of Hashem that began with Avraham Avinu, and the additional quality of teaching the children how to continue in the ways of Hashem. As a matter of fact, how great is this quality of serving God and teaching your children to serve God as well? It says that Avraham Avinu had 10 tests, 10 ניסיונות. ובכל זאת, בכל הניסיונות, אין הפסוקים אומרים, ידעתיו. Notice in this pasuk, it says, כי ידעתיו למען אשר צווה את בניו. The word yeda'tiv, we could have just skipped over it because modern Hebrew dictates that, because I know he will do, or I know that he will continue. But the word yeda'tiv in biblical language is deeper. Like when Adam yada et Chava. What's yada et Chava? He knew her. What's he knew her? He was on a very deep level, on a very personal level. Meaning it's a deeper way of knowing a person. Yedativ, it says lashon chiba. It's a language of help me. Sympathy. Beautiful. More like chiba is more like closeness. Ela rak avur asher tzaved banav vebeto acharav. The only time that this word was used, asher yedativ, it wasn't used on Akedat Yitzchak. It wasn't used on Sodom VaAmorah. It wasn't used for all the 4 kings, the 5 kings, the Avimelech, the Paro. None of that. The famine, nothing. None of those texts got the word yedativ. None of that got that lashon chiba. None of that got that special word placed. What word was used yedativ? Only when it talked about asher tzaved banav vebet acharav. That's what caught God's eye. That's what made Hashem feel closer to Avraham Avinu, because he knew he would command, teach, and carry on the ways of God with his children and his home and all generations to come. Lomdim mikan kama gedola ma'alat chinuch habanim. From here we learn how incredible it is, the education, the Jewish education of our children. Now, let's take it a little bit deeper. Let's do a little chinuch comparison. We have over here Moshe Rabbeinu, the ultimate rabbi, the first rabbi, Moshe Rabbeinu. And we have his brother, who's no slouch, Aharon HaKohen, Kohen Gadol, Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. They both had kids. They both had wives. They both had a path in life. And they both had children. And each one took a different path and got a different result. These pesukim over here, they're a little enigmatic because they leave a lot of doors open for questions. I'll go back and say, we don't know why, when it says that these are the children of Aharon and Moshe, that they mention just the kids of Aharon. Oh, Rashi tells us because when you teach a child, he becomes like yours. Okay, I'll take that. But what happened to not mentioning Moshe's children at all? There's a backstory that will allow this to make sense. And in order to understand it fully, we have to understand the entire storyline of Aharon and the entire storyline of Moshe. Put it together, and then we'll have the aha moment. Now I get it. But right now, to just skip over these 4 pesukim, and this is the one thing that I want to highlight. Sometimes we read the parasha, we read the 4 pesukim, and we move on. We move on. That's it. I got it. Aharon had 4 kids. They were Kohanim. Next. Tonight, we're not going to make next. We're going to drill down into these 4 pesukim and try to get the most out of it. Let's start with Aharon. Let's start the chinuch comparison with Aharon HaKohen. Aharon had 4 kids. The most memorable ones up until this point are Nadav and Avihu. And Nadav and Avihu, if I had to explain it, Nadav and Avihu are overachievers. If I had to categorize them as people, as children, they are overachievers. They always wanted to do the maximum, the most. As a matter of fact, they did so much that eventually their approach was actually categorized as Esh Zara, a strange fire, something that was unwanted, meaning they reached such a level that it surpassed acceptable norms, and it was actually categorized as Esh Zara. Your service is a strange fire and unwanted. And they got zapped. They got killed in Kodesh HaKodeshim for bringing over the incense offering, the Ketoret. Nadav and Avihu, as people, were overly spiritual. As a matter of fact, they were so overly spiritual that they became miscalculated in their ways. So miscalculated that it cost them their life. They died. Nadab and Avihu died because they made the wrong decision on spiritual matters. Just giving you some broad strokes. We're going to get deeper, but these are just broad strokes. Moshe also had children. Moshe had Gershom and Eliezer. Moshe's children were underachievers. They were complete opposite of Aharon's children. The Midrash brings, Lo hayu lamdanim. They weren't learners. Even though that their father was the greatest Gdol Ador, the greatest rabbi of the generation, the rabbi, his children were not learners. Lo hayu lamdanim, it's brought. And as a matter of fact, it says that Moshe's children went off the derech. So much that they made wrong choices that they actually led to avodah zarah. That they actually were participating with idol worship. And we can see that on broad strokes, there's a complete contrast between these two families and their two paths and their final destination. So let's look at the two paths of chinuch. We'll start with Aharon. Aharon is famously known for Ohev Shalom, Rodef Shalom. That's what he's famously known for. That he loved peace, he pursued peace. He's also famously known to be the original Kohen Gadol. He was the first one chosen by God to be the big kahuna, the Kohen Gadol. He's also famously known to have his two children die on the grand opening of the Mishkan. So imagine the Kohen Gadol, Aharon, gets hired for a job. You are going to lead Am Yisrael in the Mishkan. There's things that only you are able to do. There's the whole nation depends on you. The relationship between the Jewish people and Am Yisrael, you are the intermediary in between you and your children. And we're going to build this big Mishkan, and we're going to collect for it, and we're going to build it. And then there's going to be a grand opening by Yom HaShemini, Aleph Nisan. There's going to be a grand opening, and it's going to be, imagine, your business. You're going to be the CEO of this business. And on the grand opening, on the day of the Mishkan, what does he hear? Nadav and Avihu are dead in Kodesh HaKodashim. Your two sons went into your office, and they made an executive decision. It backfired on them, and now they're dead on the floor. Could you imagine? That's exactly what happened to Aharon HaKohen. What happened to these guys? What happened to Nadav and Avihu? Why would they die? And why on that day? As a matter of fact, it's brought that Moshe was speaking to Aharon, and he said that God said that he's going to sanctify himself. He's going to sanctify the Mishkan with the holy ones. I thought it was me and you were the holy ones, but now that it happened with Nadav and Avihu, it seems that they're holier than us. And Chazal say that they were. That Nadav and Avihu were higher than Moshe and Aharon. And if they were on a higher level than Moshe and Aharon, how could this have happened to them? And as a matter of fact, the reason why it's constantly mentioned that they brought Esh Zara, Chazal tell us, because it's the only thing they did wrong. Their entire life was flawless. The only thing that they did wrong is this Esh Zara, this strange fire. Which also Chazal tells us that their intentions were good. That their whole intention was what? That they wanted to rectify the Chet Adam HaRishon. That their whole reasoning was that, I'll just give you a 30-second commercial. It's not connected to the class, just so you can have this nugget also. It's so beautiful. That Nadav and Avihu said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is opening up the Mishkan. God's holy presence, the Shekhinah, is finally going to be amongst us here in Kodesh HaKodashim. The last time that we had this was 2,448 years ago when He created the world, when He had Dira B'Tachtonim in the time of Adam HaRishon. But what happened? What happened between day one and year 2,448? God's holy presence went up to from the seventh heaven to the sixth heaven to the fifth heaven to the fourth heaven to the third heaven. The opposite. From the first to the second, second to the third, fourth to the fifth, sixth, all the way to the seventh heaven. Why? Because of all the different sins that people did. The first one was the sin of Adam Arishon. The second one was Dor Enosh, the first generation to do Avodah Zarah. After that, it was the generation of the flood, the generation of disbursement. And then it was Paro. All these different things that happened in history that eventually Hashem says, I got to be as far as possible from you. This is not a welcome place for me. The world is not a dira b'tachtonim. I wanted to be amongst you, but you pushed me away, and you pushed me away, and you pushed me away. Avraham Avinu started to do the tikkun and started to bring Hashem from the Shekhinah from the 7th heaven to the 6th heaven. And then Yitzchak, 6 to 5. And then Yaakov, 5 to 4. And then we had Levi, Kehat, Amram, Moshe. And they brought it all that after 2,448 years, God's holy presence is going to be here just like day one of creation. Come to Nadav and Avihu and says, you know how we messed this up? It was Adam and Chava with that wine. The Zohar says they had some of that wine. They said, we'll do the tikkun. What's the biggest offering that we can bring? The best offering that we can bring in the Mishkan? The Ketoret. It's the highest of all. So they said, we'll bring the yain, and we'll bring the incense, and we'll do a tikkun, and we'll go inside. Great idea. They wanted to go for the whole pot. We'll fix everything before everything starts. Good intentions. What do you say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. What happened? They got zapped. Why? Many reasons. Who told you? Who told you? You have a rabbi? Did you ask who's your rabbi? Oh, Moshe Rabbeinu. Did you ask him? Did you ask Moshe Rabbeinu if that's a good idea? You know what? Maybe he wasn't available. He's busy. He's putting the Mishkan, putting it together. Putting up the Mishkan, putting it, taking it apart. How about your father? Your father happens to be also a big rabbi. Aaron Kohen. Did you ask your father? You didn't ask your father, no? You decided on your own? So we see that, they made a decision on their own. And because of that, they made a wrong decision because that's not what Hashem wanted. It's not what they were instructed to do. And it was to their demise. However, there's 15 reasons why they died. Chazal bring us 15 reasons. I'm only going to give you 4. It says in Midrash Vayikra Rabbah, "Lo metu bnei Aharon ela al yedei shoru halacha b'fnei Moshe Rabban." It says, you know what's the reason that Nadav and Avihu died? They said a halacha in front of their rabbi. Be very, very careful when the rabbis teach halacha. Like when somebody says, are you allowed to peel onions on Shabbat? They're asking the rabbi, right? And you jump up. Of course. You can't jump up. There's a rabbi in the place. He's supposed to stand there. So that they did. Shehoru halacha b'fnei Moshe Rabban. That Moshe Rabban was here, and they're giving halachot out. Because of that, they deserve to die. V'yesh omrim shetuyei yain nichnesu lamikdash. And some say that actually the reason why they died is because they drank wine. You can't go into the Mikdash, you can't go into Kodesh HaKodeshim when you're drunk. And by the way, that's not also in Parashat Shemini. Right after they died, the next thing that we see is that Hashem speaking to Aaron, letting him know there's no drinking in the Bet HaMikdash. Right after. Shetuyei yain nichnesu lamikdash, that's why they died. V'yesh omrim shelo nasu isha. You know why they died? Because they weren't married. They were single. דכתיב, ובנים לא היו להם. They didn't have children. Khatam Sofer brings an interesting point that I wanted to plug in here. It says, Nadav and Avihu didn't get married because they wanted to learn Torah. All they wanted to do is Torah. No time for a wife. No time to get married. ואמרו, מתי ימותו שני זקנים אלה? They actually said they looked at Aharon, their father, and they looked at Moshe Rabbeinu. You know what they said? When are these two old fogies going to die? When are these zkenim going to die? So we can take over. לזרז עצמם לעסוק בתורה. You know, in order for what? That they should be busy with Torah learning their whole life. Meaning they wanted so much to be in that position of leadership that they were willing to do anything for it, not get married, wait for their Moshe and that sounds so crude and so not. We just said that there were such tzaddikim that their only sin was this esh zara. Surely this is not their derech or the way of thinking. Surely there was a better way to understand this. So it says. It says when they came out of Egypt, Nadav and Avihu, the Elazar and Itamar were born after Nadav and Avihu. And Elazar and Itamar already were married and with children. When they came out of Egypt, Elazar and Itamar were married and had children. So it should have had that Nadav and Avihu, who were born before them, married and had children. But it wasn't as such. So why didn't they get married in Egypt before they had all these lofty endeavors to lead the Jewish people? You're in Egypt, you're just like every other Jew. Get married, have children. Why didn't you? Furthermore, it says, שלא נשאו נשים שחשקו בתורה. וכבר במצרים היה אהרון קדוש, קדוש השם ונביא לישראל. Says that even, Shemot Rabbah brings that even though the Torah wasn't around, but Aharon HaKohen was already a Kedosh Hashem v'Navi, he was a prophet. ואלו בניו היו גדולים ברוח הקודש, and they were also very holy, to the level that they were actually had רוח הקודש. ונפשם חשקה בזה. They wanted more spirituality. They couldn't get enough of the spirituality. ולא נשאו נשים שלא התבטאו במחשבתם הקדושה. And they didn't want to get married because they didn't want their mind to be off the Torah. They didn't want their mind to be off holiness. They wanted to be 100% of the time fully focused, God, Torah, mitzvot, all these lofty things that are spiritual. And when they said, "Matai yamutu shne skanim halalu, vani batan anhig et hador," when they said those words, when are these old men going to die so we can take over the nation and lead this generation? Al derech kublana amru ken. He says they said it like in a way, not like in a negative way, but rather in a way that it could be understood as such. Al korchecha sof shiutal alinu on tzibur, velo nachol asok b'torah karav. He says eventually, whether you like it or not, we're the next ones in line, and we're not going to be able to toil and learn Torah if we're going to be the next ones in line. Imken, im lo achshav imatai. So let's skip through the process. If eventually we're going to take over, let's take over now. Why wait and wait and wait and wait and wait? Who had the same ideology? Korach. What did Korach want? Korach wanted Mashiach now. He didn't want to wait and go through the desert and go to Israel. He said, Kulanu kedoshim. We're all holy. We're all the same talit chelet. You're not any special. So what do we say over here? Same thing. Nadav and Abihu says, we're eventually going to fall into this role, so might as well do it right now. So, let's speed things up. Al ken lo nasu. So that's why we didn't get married, because they were so anxious to fall into the role of Moshe and Aharon. Furthermore, it says in Midrash Vayikra, Kama betulot nit'agnu. He says, you know how many young women waited for them? Because just like they were waiting not to get married because of the position, but there were also these other women that was like, oh, I can't wait. Nadav and Avihu, good family. Moshe Rabbeinu was their uncle. Aharon HaKohen is their father. You have Nachshon ben Aminadav, that's part of the family. What a great family! And the girls vied to be part of that family. So what happened? They're waiting. It didn't happen. So a lot of them got stuck without getting married because of them. And what happened? It caused the young woman waiting to get married to Nadav and Avihu to have the same mentality as them. מתי ימותו הזקנים ויהיה אחד מאלה כהן גדול שעל כוחו יישא אישה. He says, let the Moshe and Aharon pass away. One of these guys will end up being a Kohen Gadol. What's one of the criteria that a Kohen Gadol has to have? He must be married. He has to get married. You can't be a Kohen Gadol and not get married. As a matter of fact, Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, what do? They set up for him a second wife on the side. Why? Just in case his wife dies on Yom Kippur, there's another wife waiting for him, because he has to be the chaper ala al atzmo v'al beto. Beto is what? The wife of the fish. So because he has to have a family, a wife to pray for, they even had one on reserve on the side. So they said, you know what? When one of them becomes Kohen Gadol, what? Then he'll have to marry. Look what the women were also going through just to be with them. I really like this Khatam Sofer. I wanted to mention to you guys. Furthermore, if we continue to dissect the chinuch and the way of Aharon and his children, there's an additional Khatam Sofer that says, Atam shayu laim banim. He says the reason. He says אפשר לפרש ששני הטעמים הראשונים יסוד ראשון אחד להם ובנים לא יהיו להם. He says, you know why Nadav and Avihu died? The pasuk tells you why. ובנים לא היו להם. They died because they didn't have children. Meaning, Khatam Sofer says, כשאדם זוכה לבנים משלו, when somebody has his own children, his outlook changes. When you become a parent, your outlook changes. When you have children, your outlook changes. He would understood fully what it is to have the honor of a father. As long as you're not a father, you don't know what's kvod av. But because they had no children, they didn't understand that. So they didn't understand what the lack of respect that they had for their father in their outlook. They didn't have the right outlook for the respect of the rabbi, Moshe Rabbeinu. And only when you become a father, then you know how to act. Are fathers or rabbis, meaning they were lacking a piece in the puzzle. Experience is everything in life. When you are, there's a lot of people, that they have to be a parent, they have to be a father, they have to be a mother in order to be in a certain role, in a certain position. One of the things of the Kohen Gadol, he has to be married, he has to have a wife. Why? Because when you have children, when you have a wife, you can see things differently, you can pray differently, you can act differently. Because they lacked that reason, because they lacked children, is why they had that outlook, and that's why they acted that way. Furthermore, when they said, "Matai yamutu shne zkenim ha'elu v'anu nanig ta'am," הם לא יכלו להבין את ההנהגה הראויה לכפי רב ומוריהם, ואין להם בנים ודאי הם חשים כיבוד מרו. He says over here that the reason why they had that outlook, when are these two going to die? When is the rabbi and the Kohen Gadol going to die? Because they didn't have the right outlook towards a parent and towards a teacher. Because if they had the right outlook over a parent and a teacher, they would have not done it this way. And the Midrash continues to say, "Sheim hayu lahem banim lo hayu metim." And the Midrash continues to say, and if they had children, they wouldn't have died also, because there's another layer to having children. What happens when you have children? Children can do things for you. Children, when a person passes after 120 years, a person can't do nothing in the Shamayim. Zero. You're done. You hand in your equipment and you're done. Now you're in the Shamayim. Everything that you work for is what you get the reward. Nothing can change it. Unless you have something that you left behind that is still rolling, still going, right? Maybe you left a kollel behind. Maybe you left a hospital behind. Maybe you left children behind. Maybe you have children that every day you get up in the morning and they go to shul and they pray and they learn Torah and they're in the ways of Hashem. They say, you left children that are God-fearing below. Now you go from this level to that level, from the higher level to the highest level. Everywhere. That's why in Rosh Hashanah we said that Hashem opens up the books of the dead and of the living, right? The Sefer HaChaim and Sefer HaMetim, not to see who's going to live and who's going to die. Sefer HaChaim and Sefer HaMetim is the actual dead people. He opens up the book of the dead people to see what they left behind. Are they getting elevated this year, or are they getting downgraded this year? Maybe you left a nightclub behind. Maybe you left a book with filth behind. Maybe you left a video that's making people sin behind. So he opens up the book of the end, you go from wherever you are. This year, downgrade, lower level of Gehenom, lower level of Gehenom. Or you live tzaddikim, what happens? And the person goes, higher level, higher level. Who does that to you? Your children. Why did they die? Ki lo hayu lahem banim. Because now they're completely dead. There's nobody there to uplift them. So Nadav, so Or Daniel is telling us, having children, they would have made a different decision. Having children, they would have seen things differently. Having children, they would have even served them well after death. But because they didn't have children, that was to their detriment. So if we have to summarize Nadav and Avihu, the children of Aharon, they were all spiritual. Which is a problem. Because this world is not all about being spiritual. Hashem did not create this world just so you could be like Nadav and Avihu. This world is about taking the physical and uplifting it through the spiritual. We live in a physical world. You can't be in a whole world that's physical and say, I'm going to ignore it. I don't want to pay attention to the world. Where do I want to go? I want to go to the Shamayim. I want to be amongst the angels of Kadosh Baruch Hu. If Hashem wanted you to be with the angels next to Kadosh Baruch Hu, He would have put you there. But He put you here. You have a job. You have a role. Take the physical and uplift it through the spiritual. Take food, make a bracha, you uplifted it. Take money, give tzedakah, you uplifted it. Get married, have children, you uplifted it. Everything that is physical, you're uplifting it through the spiritual. But you can't be just spiritual. As a matter of fact, it's a secret of the Magen David. We've been saying it a lot in the past few classes. Magen David is two triangles. One triangle is facing up, right? The base is on the bottom, meaning it's the spiritual world. I'm sorry, it's the physical world. And what we do our actions, we send it up. And when we send our actions up, there's a reciprocating effect. What happened? The other triangle. What's the other triangle? It's upside down, right? The other triangle, the wider part is on top, because right from the heaven, something comes up, right? So, right? We send from the bottom, and it returns itself back from the top. Why? Because, and that's why also the two triangles are overlapping. To show you that it's spiritual and physical. That's what this world is about. It's about taking the spiritual and the physical and the spiritual, uplifting the physical through the spiritual. What did Nadav and Avihu do? They took only one triangle, only spiritual. We're only concerned. Hashem says, listen, that's the, you know, it's like you're playing soccer with a basketball. It's two different games. You can't do it. It's not what they put you here for. But they wanted so much. They were just like these holy individuals. Hashem says, okay, come to me. I guess you want to come to me. Come. Esh Zara, now they're in the Shamayim. And that also explains Aharon's reaction. Vaidom Aharon. What kind of a reaction is that? What kind of a reaction is for a father to stay silent when he hears that his two children are dead on the floor? It's a father that knows his children. He knows this world wasn't for them. It was too difficult for them. They don't want to get married. They don't want to do. All they want to do is just spiritual. He says probably now they're in a better place. Why? That's what they always wanted to be. They want to be close to God, close to God. There's nowhere closer to God than being in the Shamayim. He understood it was the best thing for them because they were fully spiritual.
Why they drink wine? Sharone.
Tikkun. They wanted to rectify. But in general, their lifestyle was, you see, they didn't want to get married. They didn't want to partake. Everything that about them was about the spirituality. The fact that they took the wine in order to tikkun. Yeah, of course. I'm sure they also had a sandwich and a fruit and man. I'm sure they had some, regular human things. But in general, they were full-blown spiritual individuals. Furthermore, well, let's put it there. Okay, that's Nadav and Avihu. Let's go to the children of Moshe. The children of Moshe, V'yaldei Moshe lo nisperu. They weren't counted. They're not even mentioned. The entire parasha, for anyone that does the Shtayim Mikra V'Echat Targum, it's a long one this week. It's a long one this week. As a matter of fact, you know what's the notrikon for the Pesukim? This week's parasha? Katan, that's 159 Pesukim. All of them is names, numbers, names of families, meaning the whole thing. There's not a name of a tribe, a family of the tribe, the numbers of the tribe, and they repeat it a few times that is not mentioned over here. You think you could have done a favor to Moshe? Throw Gershom and Eliezer over there. We put everybody else in. No. So why were they not mentioned? So let's go back to the first pasuk. it'll also give us some more insight. It says, וידבר השם אל משה במדבר סיני באוהל מועד באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאת מארץ מצרים לאמור. It says that they came out of that this census was happening on the second year after leaving Egypt. So apparently Moshe's children were too young. How do we know that they were too young? We have to put the pieces together. Do you remember when Moshe was finally got convinced to go and be the redeemer of the Jewish people? He went and he picked up his wife Tzipporah, and he went with a donkey on the way to Egypt, right? And it says over there that on the way to Egypt, an angel comes, and he does what? He tries to give them a hard time until they figure out that was the problem. That it's time to give a Brit Milah. So if it's time to give a Brit Milah to his son, what happens? Must be that they're very, very young. So if Moshe Rabbeinu went to save the Jewish people and she went back with a kid that just got circumcised, Moshe was in Mitzrayim for 1 year, all the 10 Makot, and now this is 2 years after the Exodus. So we could say that the kid is what? 3 years old? You may guesstimate, right? Around that. So the reason why they weren't counted is because they were small. Because what we're instructed to count the people that are what? 20 and over. Okay, that makes sense. It's on the shot level, that makes sense. They're just young. If they were 20 and over, maybe they'd get mentioned, but because they're little. Secondly, it says, לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם מארץ מצרים. To the ones that got out of Egypt. Fun fact for the Seder, or fun fact for the Shabbat table. Name the only 2 Jews that weren't part of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Gershom and Eliezer, Moshe's kids. They never went in, because what happened? As Moshe Rabbeinu is going with Tzipporah into Egypt, who comes to meet him? Aharon. Aharon tells him, what are you doing? We're slaves. They're torturing us over there. You're going to bring them now to have your wife and your children tortured? Send them back home. When we come out, they'll meet up with us. He tells him, that makes sense. So in reality, Moshe went into Egypt. Tzipporah and his 2 children stayed over there. And as a matter of fact, when they came out of Egypt, Moshe came out without his family. So who was the only 2 Jews that didn't go through Yetziat Mitzrayim? Moshe's kids. Eliezer and Gershom. Now, having said that, when it says Letzetam Eretz Mitzrayim, they didn't get out of Egypt. You're making a census of the ones that came out of Egypt. They didn't come out of Egypt. And that's why they're not mentioned. Beautiful 2 pshat answers. 1, they're not old enough. 2, they didn't come out of Egypt. That's why Moshe's kids are not mentioned. But there's more. Moshe Rabbeinu and his children and his line of chinuch, when we see the final product or the way that his children came out, we see that this was to their detriment. They should have went into Egypt. They should have gone through that experience. They should have experienced the 10 Makot. They should have experienced the splitting of the sea. They should have gone through that whole ordeal. Why? Because they came after all that was done. Remember, Yitro came after I heard you got into a war in Amalek. I'm bringing you your wife. I'm bringing you your children. I want them to join you. And Yitro, Mashama Yitro, they said the Amalek, the splitting of the sea, what happened with Paro. So this transformative experience of the Exodus, they were lacking it. They were lacking this transformative experience of Yetziat Mitzrayim. They didn't have it. Everybody else did. So because they didn't go through that experience, they were a different product. They were different. They were different from everybody else in the desert. Furthermore, it says, the Bnei Moshe lo hayu lamdanim. They weren't, they weren't learners. They wouldn't attend classes. And one of the reasons is that first, as a parent, Moshe he was working with the tzibur, he was working with the public. So, as soon as God would talk to him, what was the first thing that he would do? Would he go home and tell his children and his wife first? No. The first thing that he would do is what? He would actually go straight to the people. He was constantly busy with Am Yisrael. And not only that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu just gave him the Torah. 613 questions from each individual, 1,000 questions on each halakha. How do you do this? Shchita, basar chalav. How much do I wait? When is sunset? When is mincha? When is shachrit? Never ending. He was very busy. However, because he dealt with the public, his family suffered because of it. Moshe, as great as he was, the leader of Am Yisrael, his family suffered from that role. Because not only did his children not get the proper education, but it also says that Moshe parash mi ishto. He got divorced from his wife. He wasn't married to Tzipporah. Masechet Shabbat, on the 87th page, brings שלושה דברים עשה משה מדעתו והסכים הקדוש ברוך הוא עמו. There's three things that Moshe did on his own accord, on his own understanding, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with him. Hosif yom echad midato. He added one day of abstinence based on his own understanding. This is between right before Matan Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu added an extra day for the Jewish people. Hashem said one number, he did another one, and Hashem says, you know what? I agree with you. Uferesh min ha'isha. He permanently separated from his wife. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with him. Veshiber et haluchot, and he broke the tablets of the law, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with him as well. Those are three things that Moshe did on his own accord, and God agreed with him.
What about Erev?
מה קשור ערב? הוא לא הסכים לזה. That's what he says, לך רד לעמך. It's your nation. Hashem never agreed to Erev. He did it, and he didn't agree to it. Furthermore, the Midrash brings that Moshe's sister, Miriam, was having a conversation with Moshe's wife, Tzipporah. And they were talking about the time where Eldad and Medad were mitnabim b'machaneh. Remember, there was a time when there's these two characters, Eldad and Medad. Maybe one day we'll do a class about them. Very, very interesting. And their connection to Moshe and all that. Very interesting. But nevertheless, Eldad and Medad, two individuals that were prophesying in the Machaneh. So it became public knowledge that you have Eldad and Medad prophesying in the Machaneh. So Tzipporah tells Miriam, I feel so sorry for their wives. And she tells her, why? He says, because now they have to leave. They have to get divorced. They can't be together. Why? Because when a person gets to the level of prophecy where he talks to Hashem, he has to be in a state of holiness. He has to be pure. He can't be in a state where he is having marital relations. He has to exercise abstinence. So as soon as as soon as Tzipporah heard that there's two more like Moshe Rabbeinu, she's like, oh, Moshe left me already. Now they too, their wives are going to be like me. They're also going to be divorced. Meldad and Medad are going to have to leave their wives in order for them to have this prophecy level that they're on. What happened? Miriam grabs Aharon and goes to talk to Moshe. And what happened over there? Remember? HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes out and stands up for Moshe. Perek Yud Bet. We're probably going to get to it in a few weeks. I'll read you the text. Very interesting. Dalet to Tet. Yud Bet. ויאמר השם פתאום אל משה ואל אהרון ואל מרים. Surprise! Out of nowhere. The two brothers and a sister are talking. Miriam is coming to tell Aharon about Moshe leaving Tzipporah, that they're no longer together. Did you hear? Moshe is no longer with Tzipporah. And they're coming to Moshe to say, hey, what's going on? Why did you leave Tzipporah? And Pit'om, and out of nowhere, God appears and says, ויאמר השם פתאום אל משה ולאהרון ומרים, צאו שלושתכם אל אוהל מועד. Go, come out from אוהל מועד, ויצאו שלושתם. Hashem commands them to come out of אוהל מועד, and they come out. וירד השם בעמוד ענן ויעמוד פתח האוהל, ויקרא אהרון ומרים ויצאו שניהם. Now, God's holy presence appears in a cloud and comes in front of the opening of Oel Moed, and he tells Aharon and Miriam to come outside. And Hashem is now speaking to them. Vayomer, Shimuna devarai. Listen to my words. God speaking to Aharon and to Miriam. He says, if I reveal myself in a form of a prophecy to somebody, I do it in a way of a dream. He has to be sleeping, and I appear in a dream. Lo chen avdi Moshe. Moshe is not like that. Bechol beti ne'eman hu. He's trustworthy. He's a trusted one in my entire house. Pe pe adaber bo. Umar'eh velo bechidot utmunat Hashem yabit. Umadua le'eretem daber b'avdi Moshe. He says, I speak to him face to face, not through a mirror, not through a lens, not through an aspliklaria, not through a picture, not through like a dream. And why didn't you fear to come and speak in this manner to my servant Moshe? And Hashem got very angry with Miriam and Aharon, and he left. HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally came down from the heavens, and he stood up from Moshe to say, he's not a regular prophet. Pit'om, look how I appear to him, out of the blue. He doesn't have to prepare, he's always prepared. He doesn't have to go to sleep. I can speak to him while he's walking, while he's talking. He is different. And that's why. And not only that, Moshe says, since I'm going to be on call all the time, I have to lifrosh mishti. He says, I have to separate myself from my wife. And Hashem agreed. So we see that Moshe had children that were not learners. He was divorced. He was separated from his wife. And furthermore, another piece of the puzzle is when Moshe Rabbeinu met Tzipporah, you know what happened. If you don't know the story, unbelievable account of the story in Ma'am Loez. If you go to Ma'am Loez, I believe it's Parashat Shemot, I believe. There's about a 10-page behind the scenes story of what happened to Moshe after he left Egypt. Because keep in mind, he left at the age of 16, 17, came back at 80. What happened for 60 plus years? What happened to Moshe? And it tells you how he was the king of Midian, and how he was an army general, and how he met Tzipporah, how Yitro put him in the ground for 10 years, how he took from him the staff. Unbelievable, a movie. Ma'am Loez accounted, definitely take a look into it. But one of the things that happened is that while he was in jail in that pit, Tzipporah, the one that he helped with the water by the well, was feeding him. She fed him in the pit while he's in jail. And they developed some sort of a talking relationship. They decided that they want to get married. Yitro acquiesces, and he says that, swear to me that you're not going to leave me until I give you permission, and that your first son is going to be for Avodah Zarah. That your first son is going to be for idol worship. And Moshe agreed. That's why if you go to Sefer Shemot, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Yudchet, you'll read this Pasuk completely different. It says, right after HaKadosh Baruch Hu requests Moshe to go to Mitzrayim and make all the signs with the staff and to go with Aharon, it says in Parashat Shemot, on the 6th Aliyah, Vayelech Moshe, Vayashav el Yether Chogno, Vayomer lo, Elech Hana, Vashuva Lecha shebemitzrayim, Vayareh haodam chayim, ויאמר יתרו למשה לך לשלום. God is telling you, go to Egypt. Moshe says, can I ask my father-in-law? That's what happened. And that's what it says over here. וילך משה וישוב אל יתר חותנו. Moshe went and came back to Yeter, that's Yitro, his father-in-law. ויאמר לו, אלך נא, can I please go? ואשובה אליך אשר במצרים, and go back to my brothers, they're suffering in Egypt, can I go back to them and help them? ואראה העודם חיים, can I see if my brothers are still alive? ויאמר יתרו למשה, לך לשלום. He gives him permission, go in peace. So we see that Moshe Rabbeinu was indebted to Yitro, that he had to ask him for permission to leave. And an additional part to it is that his son was supposed to be for Avodah Zarah. Dun dun dun, right? Look at the whole like plot thickened right now. Whoever knew that Moshe Rabbeinu had all this going on? Children that are not learning, he's divorced, first son was supposed to, it's a soap opera. What's going on over here? Well, that's the beauty. One of the things that we say is like, after accepting the role of being the Redeemer of Am Yisrael, and he gets the permission to leave, but this, all that sounds great, but Ben La'avodah Zarah, that's so hard to swallow, that he's going to have a son, that Moshe Rabbeinu will have a son that's going to be Ben La'avodah Zarah. So I saw a couple of explanations. One of them is Avodah Zarah. The word Zarah in Hebrew is not just the name of the store Zara in Hebrew. Avodah Zarah means strange. What's strange? Other. Avodah Zarah is like another type of work. So who are we talking about? We're talking about Yitro. Yitro is Kohen Gadol La'avodah Zarah. He's a spiritual being. Just some off the derech, right? Before Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm sorry, before Moshe Rabbeinu was Moshe Rabbeinu, and he became the leader of Am Yisrael, and God revealed himself in the world in the time of the Exodus. Everybody, the entire world was working Avodah Zarah, except for the Jews that were serving the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And even that was done during the 49th level of Tumah. So it wasn't so simple. It wasn't so simple at all. So what happens? You have a spiritual tourist. You have Yitro, who goes from one Avodah Zarah to the next, from Avodah Zarah to the next, trying to find out which one is going to be the right one. He was a truth seeker. So Moshe Rabbeinu was also very spiritual. And they were both spiritual beings. They both were in search of the truth. Moshe Rabbeinu was in the way of Hashem, way of his forefathers. And Yitro was whatever the flavor of the month was, whatever Avodah Zarah came up. So when they say Avodah Zarah, when these two people are talking, two spiritual beings, spiritual entities, or spiritual guys having a conversation, and say, hey, your son is going to have a strange work, other type of work. So if we're spiritual, then he's going to be what? Physical work? Yeah, cool, no problem. Let him do physical work. I promise you that my child is going to be a physical worker, Avodah Zarah, other type of work. Not what we do. Not you chasing idolatry, and not me chasing God. He's going to be other, not like us. He's going to do physical work. That's one explanation that they brought. Another explanation, he says, look, I'm going to be Jewish. I'm Jewish, and you want one to be, according to the ways of the grandfather, right? Darkei Avot. Instead of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, he says, wait, there's also Yitro over here. So let's have one go in the way of the other Saba. He says, okay, I promise you that one won't convert. Right? So Moshe Rabbeinu had two children, Gershom and Eliezer. If you recall, on the way to Egypt, how many boys did Tzipporah circumcise? Only one. Not both. Only one. Why? Because there was an agreement. There was an agreement. One of them belongs to me. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, I got to keep my word. She says, but the snake is eating up the child. The snake is eating you up. What are we going to do over here? She says, so she took a stone and she did it herself. Why? He can't do it. He made a promise that he can't do it. That's why Tzipporah is the one that did the circumcision. Because he promised that he's going to give one sin to Avodah Zarah. And the other one, they didn't touch. So, it says over there, Sipura Mala et Ben. Nevertheless, as we get this background of Moshe's life, there's a beautiful midrash that I think we mentioned one time for Pesach, but it's appropriate here. If you go into we have the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. If you go into the Nevi'im, if you go into the books of the prophets, in Sefer Shoftim, it talks about an individual called Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe. There is an individual called Yonatan, who is the son of Gershom, who is the son of Menashe. And both of them were Kohanim la'avodah zarah. And him and his sons were priests for idol worship. And according to Chazal, in Masechet Baba Batra, on the 109th page on the second side, it says, Yehonatan hu beno shel Gershom, shaya beno shel Moshe Rabbeinu. ומה ששינה כתוב בקרא יהונתן בן גרשום בן מנשה ולא בן משה, because it says מנשה. Gershom is the son of Moshe, so say Ben Moshe. Why say Ben Menashe? מפני כבודו של משה רבנו. They concealed it. Not to publicize that the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu is a priest for idolatry. So when you go to Sefer Shoftim and you're going to see Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe, who is that? Moshe's great grandson. And why does it say Menashe? It's supposed to be Gershom ben Moshe, to conceal his identity. They put Menashe. I think, I know the first time that I read this, it's like almost, it's hard to believe that the children and the grandchildren of Moshe Rabbeinu are working in a church, working in a Buddhist colony, Avodah Zarah. You know how I feel? It hurts. It hurts. As a parent, as Moshe Rabbeinu, then his children or grandchildren are off the derech. There's no worse pain in the world for a parent, or definitely a religious parent, or a rabbi, or a Moshe Rabbeinu, that their children are worshiping idolatry. What a pain in the heart. Chazal in Masechet Baba Batra continue to say, שנתן הגיע לדיוטה תחתונה זו להרוויח הרבה כסף. He says, you know why he got to this low level of working in idol worship? He says because he was making money. He made a lot of money. ובבית עבודה זרה היו משלמים משכורת חודשית גבוהה מאוד. And his role in this monastery was paying a very big salary. He had a very good paycheck. David HaMelech heard about this. David HaMelech heard that Moshe's great-grandson is working in a church, or in a place, Bet Avodah Zarah, a worship house of idolatry. And he saw that the spiritual level of Moshe's grandson is very low, so he called him over and makes him a promise. David HaMelech is now talking to Moshe's grandson. Could you imagine? Like how we connecting the dots of the characters in Jewish history. It's unbelievable. And he tells him, when David HaMelech is talking to Moshe's grandson, he tells him, I promise you that I'm going to lemanot otcha sar ha'otzar, the treasurer of the kingdom. He says, and I'll give you a maskort gvoa, gvoa, gvoa. I'll surpass the pay that you're receiving over here. I'll pay you more. And he rescued him from that impure place, and he came back, and he returned to God with all his heart. All's well that ends well. If he just stopped over here, it'd be great. He went over the derech and he came back. David dies. Shlomo takes over. Shlomo changes the whole cabinet. What does he do? He goes back. He goes back to Avodah Zarah. And what happened? It says that he went back לעבוד כומר לעבודה זרה בבית העבודה זרה שבנה ירבעם בן נבט בבית אל. He went back to his older position in the house of worship, of idol worship, that Yeravam ben Nevat built in the city of Bet El. So he relapsed. He went back. However, during that time that he came back, his soul woke up. He came, he was in Tshuva. He came fully back. And somewhere in the depths of his soul, it awakened in him, he teshuvah. He kept thinking about coming back, but to do a real teshuvah, to come back for good. Not just because he's earning a lot of money, but because he wants to have a genuine relationship with God. He wants to come back. And not only that, because he recognizes that God is the real God, and He's real, and He's the creator of the world, and not this nonsense that he's around every day. And because he did a proper teshuvah, and he did come back, and he came back for the right reasons, and it was a genuine teshuvah, not only did he come back, but he also had Ruach HaKodesh, and he was also one of the prophets of Am Yisrael. He was a prophet. ונעשה לנביא אמת. So I know you'd ask that question. So if you go to Masechet Megillah, on the 14th page, on the first side, it gives you the name of all the 48 prophets that were in Am Yisrael, and then it says, "V'shnayim lo yadati." It says the two that I didn't know. It says the Shnayim shelo yadati. He's one of them. So let's think about Moshe's children, not learners, broken home. Their children deteriorated to Avodah Zarah. Teshuvah, relapse. Teshuvah came back, and now he's real to the level of a prophet. I want to go right now and speak to this Menashe, to this Yehonatan ben Gershom, and I want to tell him, what made you come back? What is it? What is it that made you come back? So it says that you came back, and not only that, came back to the level of a prophet. And you know what he said? He was asked that question. He says, K'mo kol Yehudi, just like every Jew, Moshe Rabbeinu sat with his family around the table, including Yonatan, who was his grandson, meaning Yonatan and Moshe met. They knew of each other. He saw him, and he remembered Leila Seder. He remembers that Moshe Rabbeinu was telling the story of the Exodus. Could you imagine? Moshe Rabbeinu was first hand. He was saying about the Makot, Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's why we don't even understand the power of Leila Seder, how it instills in our neshama emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he says that Moshe Rabbeinu he remembers sitting on the table with Moshe Rabbeinu, how he would do Leila Seder and all the mitzvot, and Moshe Rabbeinu would give all these wonderful stories, talk about the miracles, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu was in his life, what he did for the Jews in Egypt, and not only that, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu did a terrific job at in dressing up the story with all the things that he saw firsthand, and he would go all night till the wee hours of the morning. And Yonatan would not go to sleep as a young child. He would just be there and just listen to his holy grandfather Moshe Rabbeinu tell the stories, and those stories went deep into his heart, into his soul. He says, because of the stories that my grandfather told me in Leila Seder, I was saying to myself, Man Yosekan b'makom kol kach tameh. He says he used to walk around the monastery and say, what am I doing here in a place that's so impure? I am the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu. I come from a holy lineage. I'm Kadosh Anochi. He says, and what about all the miracles that God did for me and for all the nations? That eventually it worked on him, and he made teshuvah, and he became a Navi. So what did we learn from Aharon and Moshe's children? Let's start with Aharon and Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu, overachievers, overly spiritual, but they lacked balance. Their path in life was considered Esh Zara. Even though that we think that like if we always go in the ways of Hashem, only Kedusha, only Kedusha, only Kedusha, that's what Hashem wants from us. Yes, but it has to involve the physical part of the Kedusha. They lacked balance. In Moshe, we see that his children were underachievers. They lacked knowledge. They didn't have the limud. Lo hayu lamdanim. And eventually they went off the path. But the little that they got on Leil HaSeder brought them back. Again, with the power of what I said, never skip out on it, and never compromise that moment, that night, to adults. If you have children, those are the stars of the night every year. You know, just because you have somebody special that's from out of town, or family comes over, and the children become number 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 on the list, you missed the whole powerful night of Leil HaSeder, where it has the power to instill, to enshrine inside the children, instill inside the children's heart, and Munaf HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Look how it even brought back Moshe's grandson from Avodah Zarah. So the little bit that they had from Leil HaSeder brought him back. This teaches us that in Chinuch, you need balance. You need to have balance in Chinuch. You have to have both physical and spiritual, and you have to know how to mesh them, how to mold them together. That's the whole essence of a Jew. To elevate the physical world through the spiritual world, through our spirituality. That's our essence. That's why every single thing that we do has to have a little bit of Hashem sprinkled on it. That's our essence. That's what we're here for. It's our role. So this balance between the physical and the spiritual is a must. And also, you have to have proper time management for both the parents and the kids. The parents have to have proper time management of how to divide up their days. Look what happens with Moshe Rabbeinu. Too much work, not enough time with the family, it backfired on him. And we also see that even the children what? They don't want to learn. So what happens? They don't want to learn. You leave them, let them be. Rak yeladim. They grow up to be, adults that are disconnected. So don't give any discounts to the children because they're just children. Because the most powerful time for the children is when they're young. That's the time where you teach them. And for the adults, use your time use your time management properly, because when you have kids, how long are they going to be under your roof? For the 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and then they outgrow and they move on to their own life. So during that time, know that a bulk of your time has to go to the education of your children. And in addition, we also learn not to give up on any Jew. En yeush bechinuch. We see, you look at Moshe's children. If we stop the story in the middle, oh my God, Moshe's children are working in a monastery. What a bad. Never give up. Never give up. That grandson heard his grandfather tell him a story of how the sea split when he was 8, 9, 10 years old. When he's 50, 60, he's coming back because of that. Never give up. Never underestimate the power of the Torah and the power of the Torah that's in a person's heart. And yeush bechinuch. Never despair in education of our children. Because you plant seeds, you'll see fruits. Plant the seeds of Torah in their brain. Eventually when they grow up, you'll see fruits. Don't worry. They're in God's hands. And the Torah, once you put it in somebody's head, little by little, it continues to work. I want to conclude with a Masechet Kiddushin on the 29th page on the first side. When it talks about how to, it actually gives us instruction on what we need to do as parents and with our children. It says, here, האב חייב בבנו למולו ולפדותו ולמדו תורה ולהשיאו אישה, וללמדו אומנות, ויש אומרים אף להשיטו במים. רבי יהודה אומר, כל שאינו מלמד את בנו אומנות, מלמדו ליסטות. ליסטות צדקה דעתך, אלא כאילו מלמדו ליסטות. Okay. Beautiful Mishnah from, beautiful Gemara from Masechet Kiddushin. It says, a father must circumcise his child, must lifduto, let me see how they said over here. To redeem him as so we know the firstborn, there's Pidyon Ben, right? The Pidyon Ben with the Kohen, you give the 5 coins, right? So a father must circumcise his son, must do the Pidyon Ben, ulelamedo Torah, must teach him Torah, ulasio isha, and to marry him off, ulamdo omanut, and teach him a job, ve'yesh omrim af la'ashito b'mayim, and some say you even have to teach him how to swim in water. It says anyone who doesn't teach his son a craft, he taught him how to practice banditry. Meaning if you don't teach him how to make a business, eventually he'll turn into a convict. Why did I bring this Gemara? Because this is very interesting. We're talking about what's the right way to raise our children. We started off with strive to be like Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. It's in your DNA, you can do it. Reach for the stars. But then we see that we look at 2 spiritual giants, we look at Aharon and Moshe, and they led 2 different paths with their children. And they both ended in 2 different places. And we are trying to figure out what's the right way for me. I want to walk out of this class and I want to go out into the street and I say, okay, I know how to raise my children. I know what I need to do. So we open up Masechet Kiddushin, and on the 29th page I give you the formula. Your father, circumcise him, make sure that you redeem him, Pidyon Haben. Make sure that you are teaching him a trade. Make sure you marry him off. Make sure you, what's the other one?
Swim.
No, there's another one. Teach him Torah, and then teach him to swim. Okay? Baruch Hashem, Pidyon Haben and circumcision, I would say those are the easy ones. Teach Torah. What's teach Torah? Teach him halakha. What? זה כשר, זה טרף. זה מנחה, זה ערבית. זה שבת, זה חגים. Teach him all the halachic ways of how to live a Torah lifestyle. Teach him a trade. Absolutely. He has to make parnasah. I'm a carpenter. I'll teach him how to build with wood. I'm a doctor. I'll teach him how to heal. I work in jewelry. I teach him how to sell jewelry. Each one, teach him a trade. So he goes into the world and he earns an honest living. Because if he don't, he'll earn his living a different way. We don't want him to be a convict. Lischot is to swim. It's like you think Masechet Kiddushin was in Miami. They're in Bavel. There's no ocean in Bavel. Is there? There's no ocean in Bavel. There is? Iran, Iraq has beaches. Nevertheless, Lischot. So it's later on when you go into the Gemara, it tells you, should he fall overboard? He could save himself. The guy falls off of a boat. You don't want to just, drown into the water and die. Teach him, doggy paddle, move your arms, move your legs, save your life. Meaning, teach him how to save his life, how to fend for himself. But when we said to swim, we always know, en ma'im el Torah. Tell him to swim. Lischot b'mayim. What is lischot b'mayim? We know that the Torah is deep. It's not just halachot. It's not put your foot on right and then put the shoe on the right leg first and on the left leg second. It's not just the how to tie a talit, how to wrap tefillin. The Torah is deep. Teach him how to swim inside the Torah, how to go deep into the Torah, into the pshat, remesh, drash, sod. This reminds me of a famous not parable, like an example that Rabbi Mansour once gave. He says that sometimes you come to people and he says, there was a guy that he came to the office and he tells them, you see the water cooler? It has a 5-gallon jug of water, that you put on top, the big one. He says, yeah. He says, take 2 of them. He says, 2 of them? Yeah. He says, what? And do what? He says, take them with you all the way across the street to the ocean. He says, wow, this is so heavy. For what? There's so much water in the ocean. Why have to carry it? He says, I need fresh water by the ocean. He says, take these 2 5-gallon jugs and take them to the ocean. He says, no, I can't. It's too heavy. I can't do it. So he tells them, so 2 5-gallon jugs is hard for you to carry, right? He says, okay. He says, you go to the ocean. And he goes to the ocean. He goes, how many gallons of water are in the ocean? He says, billions. He says, what happens if you jump into it? He says, the water carries me. He says, exactly. He says, that's the Torah. He says, when you're outside of the Torah world, what happens? 2 bottles is heavy. Oh, I can't go to minyan. I can't go learning. It's so heavy. He says, when you're outside of the water, everything's heavy. When you're outside of the Torah world, everything's heavy. But when you're in the Torah world, when you're swimming inside the Torah world, when you're in billions of gallons of water, the water carries you. The Torah carries you. People don't know the sweetness of the religion until they get into it. So when he says, "Lishchot b'mayim," dive into the water, dive into the Torah, dive into the Torah life. It's a sweet one. And this is what the Gemara is trying to teach us. Teach your children how to swim inside the water, to enjoy how the water lifts them up. Because when they're outside of it, the religion is heavy. Even 2 gallons, even two bottles they can't carry. Furthermore, we see that Moshe and Aharon had 2 different parenting styles. Why? Why was the parenting styles? We spoke a lot about the kids, but what about the parenting styles of Moshe and Aharon? The parenting styles were different because Moshe and Aharon were different. Moshe was kadosh me'al hateva. Moshe Rabbeinu was above nature. He was a ish Elokim, half man, half angel. He was ish nisim. He created miracles. He went up to the heavens bli achila v'shtiyah for 40 days 3 times. What human being can go up to the heavens and not eat and not drink for 40 days 3 times? He's the one individual in the history of the world. Shorit Torah min hashamayim. He brought the Torah down from the heavens. There's only one. There's only one original. You can't copy that. You can't make another Moshe Rabbeinu. There's only one. He's one of a kind. Aharon, his kedusha is bateva. His whole approach was part of nature, part of the norm. He's ohev shalom, rodef shalom. His whole essence was he loved peace, he pursued peace. He was an Eved Hashem. He was a rabbi in Egypt. He was the rabbi in the desert. He was working with the people for Shlom Bayit. He was a part of regular life. Not up in the Shamayim talking with angels. He was a regular guy. He had a regular day job working the Mishkan. He had a routine. So because he had something that was tangible of this world, physical, kedushato nimshechet l'tzeitzav. He was able to pass that on to his children. Moshe couldn't, because he can't pass on what Moshe had. Why? Kedushat Moshe lo nimshechet. It's exclusive to him because of one concept, and with this we'll finish. I know we went a little bit over, but it's a good lesson. Another concept that you're going to be hearing probably from a lot of people that are Dorshim. Torah lo overet birusha. You can't inherit your father's Torah. Your father could be Moshe Rabbeinu, and you could be an ignoramus. Your father could be a Rav Ovadia Yosef, Zechet Tzadik Livracha, and you might turn out completely the opposite. You can't inherit the greatness of Torah. You have to earn it yourself. Chayav Adam la'amol, as we said in the beginning, leyagea ba'atzmo. He has to exert himself. He has to fully apply himself. Kedei le'agia le'gdola shebata. You can't achieve spiritual greatness if you don't apply yourself. It's not, my father was great, I'll take over. It doesn't work like that. As a matter of fact, this is reflected in the story of Bnot Tzlofchad. Bnot Tzlofchad, who knows who Tzlofchad is? Tzlofchad is the Mekoshesh. Remember a few weeks ago we had the Mekoshesh? The one that picked up the sticks on Shabbat? That's Tzlofchad. Remember they stoned him, right? For not keeping Shabbat. What happened to his kids? He only had daughters. They're called Bnot Tzlofchad. And when the time came to the splitting of the land of Israel, he said, what about us? We don't have any men. We're just ladies. Can we inherit our father's portion? Moshe went and asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, yes, the ladies inherit the father's portion. So as soon as he heard that, Moshe Rabbeinu says, will my children inherit me as well? And he goes and asks HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and asks a question that maybe there's a possibility that his children will fill the place of their father after he dies. However, when Moshe wanted to ask, or even hinted, because he says, Mi malet mekomi, right? When the time came, Moshe Rabbeinu had a conversation with God, who's going to fill my place? Thinking, and this happened right after he asked Bnot Tzlofchad. So because he heard that Bnot Tzlofchad are going to take over their father's portion of the land, so he asks about himself now, thinking he'll get the same answer. Oh, your children will go and will take over your position. As he thought in his head, Im habanot yoshot bedin hu shirshu banai et kevodi. If girls, women are able to inherit their father, surely my boys can inherit my father, their father. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a pasuk from Mishle. Notzer te'ena yochal pirya. He says somebody who protects the fig is going to also is not going to eat the fig. Meaning what? The one who works gets the reward. Meaning the one that protects the fig is not going to eat the fig. Meaning if you do work, shouldn't you get the reward for it? Meaning what? Your kids didn't work for it. Who worked? Who worked tirelessly and endlessly, non-stop to serve Moshe Rabbeinu? Yoshua ben Nun. And that's why he said Yoshua is going to do it. He earned it. He was the one that went hand and foot with you everywhere that you went. He was the one that's cleaning up the Bet HaMikdash. He was the one that was sitting by the side of the mountain when he came down. He put in the work. He put in the effort. He's going to take over. You want your kids to take over? What did they do? Where's their Yegiah? Where's their effort? Where's the Torah that they learned? Because they didn't have it, they didn't earn it. Because you can't inherit Torah. As a matter of fact, later on, not later on, but we see in Sefer Shemot, remember after the sin of the golden calf, what happened over there? HaKadosh Baruch Hu was very upset with the Jewish people, and what did he give as an option? He says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Shemot Lamed Bet Pasuk Yud. No. He says, Ve'esecha legoy gadol. Right? He says, let me get rid of all the Jewish people. I'll annihilate all the people that participated in the golden calf, and I start from scratch with you. You and your family. The whole Jewish nation will be Moshe and his children. What does Moshe Rabbeinu tell him? Mechenina misifrecha. Erase me from your book if this nation doesn't become Am Yisrael, if this nation doesn't go to Israel. Why? He says, if my children are going to lead Am Yisrael, it's not going to work. Mechenina misifrecha. If these people are not going in, don't depend on my children. Don't build the whole nation for my children. They're not putting in the work. These guys, you know what they went through? Slavery, Exodus, fighting Amalek, dealing with the Erev Rav. These people are working. They're going through the transformative experience. My kids did not go through that. So when Hashem gave him the option that, well, I'll start over with you, Moshe himself said, it's not an option. Let me and my children. This nation is the one that deserves the land of Israel. Finally, and with this I'll conclude. Lama lo kadvu shemot bnei Moshe? Why weren't the names of Moshe, the names of Moshe's children written in the Torah? Because the list is too long. We're all his children. What did we say in the beginning? Kol hamelamed et ben chavero ole alav kiyaledo. Anybody who teaches his son's child Torah, it's as if he gave birth to him. Who is our rabbi? Who's the rabbi of the Jewish people? Moshe Rabbeinu. He's our teacher. We're all his children. If they had to write all the children of Moshe Rabbeinu, they'd need what? They need maybe a million pages for all the names of the Jews throughout the ages that we're going to be learning the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So the reason why it's not written, because the list would be too long. It'd have to include all of our names in there. And the final thing, the two takeaways from Moshe and Aharon, we might have seen them in raw light tonight, and might have seen some aspects of their life that maybe we're not privy to or not comfortable to hear, and might even ruin our image of their perfect image that we have of Moshe and Aharon. But at the end of the day, they were human beings, and they had a life, and they worked with the cards that they were dealt. But there are two things that we need to take away from them, and these takeaways are worthwhile for Moshe and Aharon. It says about Moshe, Vaish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam. There was no one more humble than Moshe, than any other person on the planet of the earth. Take that with you. Emulate that. It's in your DNA. Make it your own. Be humble. And Aharon, ohev shalom, rodef shalom. Beautiful quality. He loved peace. He pursued peace. And we should be lifelong students of these two attributes. Hashem barech atkhem v'sameach atkhem. And B'ezrat Hashem, we merit and succeed in the chinuch yeladim, especially, it's all about the children. It's all about Matan Torah, how the Jewish people gave their children as collateral for Matan Torah. As on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, we're instructed to read the prayer for the children of the Shla Kadosh. I was going to throw something in there, but it would have been too long. Maybe in the Rosh Chodesh we'll mention it or whatnot. But it's all about the children. It's a good time to focus right now about children. In a month from now, will be a different energy, different concepts, different Torah lessons. But right now, this is the week to concentrate on our children, our Torah learning, our Torah teaching, and knowing that this is our job to instill Torah, to teach Torah to our children. It's our role. When they become adults, it's a different story. So if you still have young children under your roof, make sure that that's your focus.